Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Rachel Nelson, and I'm the co-director with my colleague Gina Dent of the Visualizing Abolition Initiative at UC Santa Cruz in California. It's a real pleasure to have today an event that really helps us think about what visualizing is and why it was formed as an initiative around 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I came together with Gina Dent and many other colleagues, organizers, artists, thinkers, to think about how the arts help us imagine worlds beyond what we're living right now. In the United States, of course, where we're located right now, we're on the cusp of a world in which we do not know what it's going to look like. The pressures that are coming down about culture, about dreaming, about imagining, about the worlds that we can live in are getting tighter by the moment. And but yet we think that it's incredibly important to think together about what it is that we can be, how we can live beyond what our governments and what our states are imagining. How can we care for each other and lift up the voices of those who have experienced the most harm at the regimes that we're living in? So against the backdrop of a rainy day in California, of what's happening in Palestine, not only in Gaza, but the West Bank, what's happening around the world, it's a particular pleasure to have with us Fevereiro Third Front, a collective from Brazil who's been with us for a week now, organizing events from talks to dance parties, to think about how we can better build our communities in the face of the violences that are surrounding us and impacting us. So I'm very glad that we're here, very grateful that we're all doing this. You can follow everything that we do at our website, Visualizing Abolition at ucsc.edu. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Felipe, and he'll introduce our guests for today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Felipe. I'm from Frente Fevereiro, and welcome to the Performative Meetings. Performative Meetings, 20 years of collaboration between social and artistic movements. The idea of this event is to focus on 2 decades of collaborations between social and artistic movements, highlighting how these partnerships have generated new forms of resistance and political action. The idea is to investigate the intersection of art and activism as a tool to confront racial and social injustices, and to reflect on the power of artistic and cultural legacies as a form of social transformation. Our collective is 20 years old, from São Paulo, Brazil, and we invited some friends of ours who have been with us in some parts of this journey. They were an important part of our history, our work, and our development. And we invited them to participate and share some reflections with us. So I'll present them first, and then we will present ourselves. So Jennifer Ponce de Leon is a scholar and writer whose research focuses on left movements and cultural production in the 20th and 21st centuries, and Marxist and anti-colonial thought. She is associate professor of English at the University of Pennsylvania, where she is also faculty in Latin America and Latinx studies, and a member of the graduate groups in comparative literature and Hispanic studies. She's the author of Another Aesthetics is Possible, Arts of Rebellion in the Fourth World War, and co-editor with Richard T. Rodriguez and Randall Williams of Puto and Other Plays by Ricardo A. Bracho, forthcoming. And she's associate director of the critical theory workshop Atelier de Théorie Critique, and co-editor of the anti-imperialist Marxist book series of Iskra Books Critical Theory Workshop. Ismail Farouk is a multidisciplinary artist who currently works with the tools of film and food growing, experimenting with rekindling relationships and networks with plants, animals, and ecosystems we as humans are embedded in and supported by. Having handed in their PhD in food-based artistic practices and as an artist deeply invested in urban and spatial inequalities, Farouk explores how these intersect with colonial and apartheid stories. Through their arts-based research practice, Farouk investigates how food and land-based art can unsettle colonial ways of being in the world and enact or imagine speculative futures of abundance. Farouk is currently a lecturer in fine art at Durban University of Technology and the director of Art for Humanity based in Durban, South Africa. Their work has been featured in various collections, publications, platforms, and exhibitions globally. By interrogating intersecting modalities and technologies of power that reproduce colonial legacies in the everyday, Farouk works towards carving out spaces to explore, discuss, and perform alternative and hidden archives. And last, Wagner Carvalho, born in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, has been working in the tradition of Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed since the age of 12. He trained as a dancer, actor, and speech teacher at various schools in Belo Horizonte. He then became artistic director of the theater school Núcleo de Estudos Teatrais in Belo Horizonte. From 1996 to 2000, he studied theater at the Freie Universität Berlin, Free University of Berlin. He received scholarships from the Goethe Institute and the Brazilian Ministry of Culture, among others. Since 1991, he has carried out numerous artistic social projects in Germany and Brazil. He took over the pedagogical and trainer work at the Berlin Ensemble, Grips Theater, and in Free Productions. He was the founder and organizer of the Fórum Brasileiro da Dança, the Association of Brazilian Dancers and Choreographers in Berlin, and organized the event series Blicke in collaboration with the Werkstatt der Kulturen. I don't speak German, so I'll do my best. And the Heinrich Böll Stiftung in November 2002. He also established the festival Brazil Move Berlin, Festival des Zeitgenössischen Brasilianischen Tanzes. Wagner can correct me again, if you want. At the beginning of the 2012-13 season, he took over the artistic direction at Bauhaus Nannenstraße, which he has led alone since November 2014. In addition, he has also been the sole managing director of Bauhaus Nannenstraße since 2016. Since 2012, he has been a member of the Hatfuhr die Kunst Berlin. So we have a very international panel today. Jennifer is in Philadelphia at University of Pennsylvania. Ismail is joining us from Durban, South Africa, and Wagner is in Berlin, Germany. So I am Felipe. I'm a DJ and also a civil servant in São Paulo. And I'm part of the Frente Fevereiro collective from its beginning in 2004. So I'm gonna let my two other partners present themselves. Eugenio.
I am hello everybody, good night, good evening, good morning. I'm Eugenio Lima. I'm a DJ, I'm a film director and theatrical director. I'm from Frente Fevereiro in the beginning, and I'm so glad to be here. That's it.
Daniel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much UCSC for our invitation here. It's a very pleasant moment be here with our friends together to think about these 20 years of working between social movements, urgence, political urgence, and artwork. I'm Daniel Lima. I'm from Frente Fevereiro. I'm PhD in audiovisual. I'm artist, editor, curator, and researcher. I'm working for a long time with our brothers here. And again, it's a pleasure. And thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Jennifer, Ismail, and Wagner to be with us in this very important moment.
Okay, so we'll start. Each one will do a presentation of up to 15 minutes. I'll let you know when there's 5 minutes left. And so I'm gonna invite first Jennifer. We met Jennifer in Argentina in 2006, and later she invited us to an event here in California, and then from them we participated in a lot of projects together. So thank you very much, Jennifer, for participating, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Felipe, and thank you, Rachel. It is a great honor to be here to speak about the work of Frente Fevereiro, and I'm very grateful to all of the organizers and to the artists. As Felipe mentioned, I've been an admirer of Frente's work since 2006, and it makes me very happy to see it showcased within this important exhibition. I'm also very glad we are talking about their work at this time, because the themes that it addresses could not be more timely, given that Frente's work is dedicated to denouncing racist state violence and analyzing its role in class warfare. While their work grew out of concerns with racism in Brazil, and it has interrogated this reality and its historical roots from multiple angles. At the same time, their work has been decidedly international in its scope and internationalist in its politics. Members of the group have produced brilliant work investigating state violence and racism in many cities across the Americas, including Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Medellin, Harlem, and Baltimore. These works provide a sobering picture of the war on the poor in the 21st century, as they draw out key connections between forms of state repression in these different sites. Their work has even demonstrated how methods of repression are developed to be exported, as they form part of transnational state infrastructures of pacification and counterinsurgency that are shaped by US imperialism, which are themselves tied to powerful and lucrative repression industries whose markets are global in scope. I first became acquainted with Frente's work in 2006 through their trilogy, which consisted of a book, CD, and documentary video entitled Zumbi Somos Nós. The documentary examines multiple ways in which racism manifests itself in Brazil, including and especially in racist state violence and racialized ideologies regarding criminality that function in tandem with it. The film delves into the historical origins of policing as a tool of exercising social control over the laboring population. The colonial origins of modern policing are particularly relevant to Frente's work, given its commitment to historicizing racist forms of oppression, as these are exercised by bourgeois states in domestic as well as international settings. Frente's documentary demonstrates that hierarchies of citizenship within Brazil are reflected in people's differential exposure to state repression, and it shows how these hierarchies have been racialized since the very emergence of the Brazilian state, built as it was on the history of racialized enslavement and dispossession of African and indigenous people. By identifying the racialized class order organized around the exploitation of enslaved African workers as the historical root of anti-Black racism in Brazilian society, the documentary reminds us that racist chattel slavery is a pillar in the history of modern capitalism. Indeed, we can recall that Marx's groundbreaking study of capital identified the enslavement and dispossession of indigenous American and African peoples as forms of so-called primitive accumulation that signaled the dawn of capitalism. And it is important to remember that these processes are not confined to capital's prehistory. These processes of so-called primitive accumulation, which organize labor pools and recreate the conditions for capitalist accumulation, are continually redeployed. And as such, colonial conquest, dispossession, coerced migration, and even genocide continue to be means of class warfare that are intimately tied to the racialization of class relations. This point could not be more salient as we witness day after day the colonial violence unleashed on Palestinians and backed by the US empire. It is also ever present in the neo-colonial hybrid warfare the US exercises across Latin America, which has forced millions of people to migrate, often to the imperial metropole, where they are subjected to racist forms of social control and subhumanization that serve to subject them to ever more intense exploitation. These are not new phenomena, of course, and while Frente's investigations into the way racist state violence functions as a tool of class warfare seems especially timely now, the truth is that I've always found their work timely, precisely because it is tethered to history and based in the group's research about concrete practices. The concreteness and attention to history in their work sets it apart from influential trends within the US Academy and art world that treat racism in a metaphysical or psychologizing manner rather than a historical one, without acknowledging race's own historicity, including and especially its particular function within capitalist class relations. As idealist treatments of race comport with the racialized imperialist liberalism that structures US political culture, it should not be surprising that they saturate its ideological state apparatuses, including the academy and the culture industries. I've often experienced Frente's work as a welcome counterpoint to that tendency within the US, and I believe that this derives from their method that prioritizes historical concreteness and gives a central place to the experiences and concerns of working class people, including through presenting their direct testimonies. The concreteness with which they approach this topic demonstrates that, far from operating as a kind of abstract transhistorical structure, racist ideologies are constantly shifting, responding to historical contingencies as fits their pragmatic function within class struggles. For example, Frente's work examines the entanglement of ideologies of race and nation, and it also demonstrates the way racial ideologies have been adapted within purportedly post-racial, post-colonial social orders, where they are retrofitted with ideologies of criminality and securitization, which themselves are products of the polarization of wealth, the precarity of the middle class, and the social exclusion of increasingly large sectors of the proletariat. Each of Frente's work features multi-layered investigations into specific instances of racialized class warfare, including policing, urban segregation, and mass evictions and displacement. In these case studies, we learn that racist ideologies are varied and flexible, while what they share is their pragmatic function of naturalizing and legitimizing practices that uphold capitalist class relations, including the social hierarchies through which it has been historically structured. Frente's work also highlights the histories of resistance that have always been the counterpart of histories of oppression. And I especially appreciate how their work has given due historical weight to working class movements in the present, precisely by showing how they are situated with long histories of class struggle and popular resistance. A very powerful example of this is found in the media and street intervention that the group realized in 2006 at a squatted building in downtown Sao Paulo. The documentation of this can be found in their film Zumbi Somos Nós, and I believe in the work that is on display right now in California. At the time, the squatted Prestes Maia building was occupied by nearly 4,000 members of the MSTC, or the Houseless Movement in the city center of Sao Paulo, which is a housing rights movement that sought low public housing solutions and the improvement of city infrastructure to serve its working class. Occupying abandoned buildings in Sao Paulo's historic center was an important tactic for this very well-organized movement. And most of the buildings they and others occupied had been vacant since the 1980s as a result of deindustrialization and economic crisis that spurred the movement of middle and upper-class urbanites out of the city center and into walled suburbs and high-rises. When the historic core of Sao Paulo was targeted for rent-intensifying urban development in the mid-2000s, the city and state governments worked to move the poor and mostly Black population living there out to the city's periphery. The state criminalized squatters and the housing movements to then enable these forced evictions. The corporate media helped to legitimize the violent evictions by depicting squatters as drug-using criminals. And as we often see in the US as well, the state's violent displacement of squatters and unhoused persons was represented as part of a process of cleaning up a stigmatized area of the city to make it available for civic use, with art and cultural events playing a leading role in the process of building consensus for this development agenda among the middle classes. When the squatters of Prestes Maya faced imminent eviction by the military police in 2006, several artists who had a relationship with the community mobilized other artists and media makers to take public action to support the squatters. Frente was one of the many collectives that created protest art, and in some cases collaborative art, for this cause. Tulio Tavares, who took a lead in organizing the artists' efforts, described their role as a kind of public relations initiative that aimed to alter dominant perceptions of the squatters that had been promulgated by the state and mass media. While many artists did street-level interactions, Frente took advantage of the corporate media's modes of constructing and disseminating representations, intervening into and utilizing these to project their own representation to a mass audience. They affixed an enormous 125-foot-long banner to the facade of the building that projected across of it in enormous block letters the phrase "Zumbi somos nos," which means "we are Zumbi." Zumbi refers to the last leader of Os Palmares, which was a large 17th century Maroon community comprised of escaped slaves, fugitive Creoles, and indigenous persons. Zumbi died trying to defend this quilombo from Portuguese colonists. This history and his name have since become a symbol of anti-colonial resistance, abolitionism, and the long legacies of indigenous and Afro-Brazilian resistance. Because of the scale of Frente's intervention, mass media images circulated of the Prestes Maya squat captured its identification with the phrase "We are Zumbi," which reframed it as a resistance community whose defense of working-class Black Brazilians need not be read as a criminal endeavor, but one with a venerable history within the Brazilian nation. Concomitantly, the intervention also situated the assault on the squatters, with the state forces enacting violence on poor Black workers on behalf of capital, within a longer history of class warfare. It suggested that, as the colonists sought to destroy the autonomous community of Palmares, which stood as the negation of their slavocratic order, the bourgeois state treats as nothing less than a political enemy an organized working class movement that insists on the priority of housing's use value to house people over its exchange value as a commodity. In 2010, Frente began a new series of action investigations addressing new forms of militarized policing being exercised on urban working classes across Latin America and the Caribbean. Their documentary, Architecture of Exclusion, examined this phenomenon in Rio de Janeiro, as it was seen in the walling in of favelas and their permanent occupation by units of the military police. Seeing the police-occupied favelas in the documentary and hearing testimonies of its residents, as well as the cops, makes plain the fact that practices of state violence and militarized social control are not only mapped onto established racial orders, but are racializing practices in themselves. Frente's cartographic work, Brasil Mundo, traces out connections between this new model of policing the poor, the Brazilian state's incarceration and extermination of poor Black youth, and its preparations to host the World Cup and Olympics in Rio. We also learned from this work that the model of policing seen in Rio's favelas was not unique, but in fact developed from methods of militarized social control and counterinsurgency seen in Medellin, Colombia, and the Brazilian military's operations carried out in areas of Haiti. All of this is contextualized within the history of colonialism and neocolonialism in the Americas. As it scales up from the 21st century class struggles cited in Rio to addressing transnational trends in militarization and hemispheric histories of class struggle, their work urges us to recognize the systemic brutalities of the liberal social order. It suggests that violent, authoritarian, and racializing modes of governance have been integral and systemic features of elites' class warfare, particularly as it is exercised on colonized and neo-colonized populations, imported and surplused workers, and those designated as political enemies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I forgot to say in the beginning that after the presentations, we'll have an open discussion, questions, reflections. So our next presenter is Ismail Farouk from Durban, South Africa. We met Ismail in 2008 when we went to do a work in South Africa, and we're really glad he's here with us. Ismail, we're gonna start. Ismail?
Hello, sorry, I'm just having a small technical issue. Please give me a few seconds.
No problem.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Hello, colleagues and friends and everybody out there. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for inviting me, Daniel, and bros, Felipe and Eugenio. It's so wonderful to be here in conversation with you from across the world, literally, from Durban. Yes, it's been a great surprise to find you all in Santa Cruz in this moment. As you know, my life and history is tied to that space in this moment. So I don't believe in I think it's a confluence and a really incredible sort of moment to be in conversation with all of you. So thank you. So yes, I met Daniel and members of the Frente group in 2008 in Johannesburg. And 2008 was quite an incredible moment to be in Johannesburg. It was a moment where when Daniel arrived with his mother, where much of the downtown space where we were and surrounding townships erupted in a xenophobic violence in that moment. And this violence, I guess, was part of the dissatisfaction a lot of people were experiencing in the moment we call the post-apartheid. And it was directed at people who were not South African and who were seen and perceived to be of a better off economic standing. And so, yes, and so a lot of the violence was sort of directed at people who were not from South Africa, and so when Daniel arrived, there were not too many people willing to show him and members of the collective to show them the downtown space or to walk with them, and I was one of the few people who agreed to do a little tour of the downtown space. I actually prepared a small little presentation, and I'm going to try to share my slides right now. Let's see if this works. Let me know if you are seeing my slides. I hope so.
We're seeing your screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
You seeing the presentation?
Yeah, you can put it in
Okay.
the presentation mode.
Okay. Yes. All right.
Yes.
So I know we have 15 minutes, and so I've had several interactions with Daniel over the last, I guess, since 2008. We met again in 2018 and in 2019 as well. So I know we have 15 minutes, but I will try and divide this into two. So I'll do a part one. And so part one will be Johannesburg 2018, right? And so I've looked I looked within the sort of indices of apartheid and currently in the post-apartheid, right? And my work therefore reflects the urgency in which unanswered social ills, inequalities, and injustices are felt as pressing questions that constrict my own breathing and that do not allow for any kind of passivity. I'm going to stop the video for a second. So as an artist and scholar, the legacies of colonialism are real, material, and urgent. And I come from a perspective of artistic practice as an extension of activism, as a place where experimentation and the confines of practicality and logic can be upended. As a place that allows us to imagine justice and freedom otherwise, art is uniquely placed to allow for a myriad of questions, practices, and methodologies to emerge, as there are no rules of engagement. So I chose to show this image to start with, really to demonstrate what the space that Daniel and the members of the Frente arrived in. And anybody looking at this image can see it. It looks quite chaotic. But the key takeaway is that Johannesburg as a city space was designed with these massive transportation hubs in the center of it. And in South Africa, the majority of people use these little minibus taxis to get around, and they are the core of the informal economy, and basically central to everybody, the urban poor's survival. If I move towards a sort of sidewalk snapshot of Johannesburg in 2018, what the image shows is how most informal economy is related to this taxi industry. In the image above, you see Mozambican motor mechanics, and the image below shows a little project I was engaged in, building spaces for these Mozambican mechanics to work from. In an urban context, which generally criminalizes any kind of informal activity. In fact, so there are two sort of major aspects of this criminalization. One is around informal economy, and the second is around foreign identity. So in the build-up, so 2008, when Daniel was and his mom, Maurinete Lima, came, was also the build-up to the 2010 World Cup, and the city was in this process of cleaning up the urban spaces, and it was a social cleanup. And here, the city and the government started to enforce old apartheid style sort of bylaws called the loitering bylaws, which came into about in 1985 during the height of the apartheid regime. And it gave the state and the police the freedom or the right to arrest anybody on the sidewalk as part of preemptive policing. So if they suspected that you were about to commit a crime, you would be arrested. And this was used as a way to clean up the street space. So a lot of the work that I was engaged in when meeting Daniel was around dealing with this issue of criminalization. And here's a protest action that we organized during that moment, as well as other interventions like trying to design trolleys like this one, which allowed people to earn a living on the sidewalk spaces, as well as organizing workshops, loitering workshops, helping with sort of legal interventions against sort of arrests and criminalization. And so this is the moment when Daniel and his and the members of Frente arrived in Johannesburg. And against this backdrop of like extreme violence, they set off on a very poetic and beautiful intervention. And in this image, I'd like to highlight that there's a much younger Daniel in the foreground. And Daniel, who is that behind you? Is that Fernando? Sorry, I can't remember.
Yes, Fernando Costa and Julio Doccia, and my mom in the background.
Yes, and Daniel's mom and in the background. And what you see on the ledge in front of you are these 3 containers filled with sand. And they embarked on a very long journey, leaving the city and driving to a point where on the border of South Africa, where South Africa meets with Mozambique and Zimbabwe. And they went and collected soil, sand in these little containers from each one of these countries and brought it back to the center of the city and engaged in a number of conversations and decided what to do with the sand, right? I hate to speak for you. This is your work, but I don't think anybody has seen this work before. So I think this is a good occasion, given that it's the 20th or 20 years, we're celebrating 20 years of Frente. And yeah, so this is an image of members of Frente engaging with the Mozambican mechanics, and I guess everybody spoke Portuguese, and so it was meant for a good conversation. Deciding what to do with the sand. Yes, Daniel's mom again. Yes, again, young Daniel Lima taking photos of one of the signs prohibiting informal trade on the streets. So I'm doing a small show and tell. And then finally, the collective deciding to empty the contents of the containers on the sidewalk space, where it was mixed together by people walking through and by footsteps and pedestrian traffic, which made for a very beautiful and poetic intervention. I'm going to stop there and leave that there as a part 1.
Thank you very much, Ismail.
Thank you.
So now Wagner from Berlin in Germany. We met Wagner also when we went to Berlin. Was it in 2009, 2008? I don't remember.
Hello, everybody. So thank you for having me here tonight. And I would like to speak to you some more freely and give some information about our experience when you met. We met 2006. Yes, some times ago. And for me, as a Black Brazilian, living more than now 33 years in German and going back to Brazil and come back to German, so also with connection with Denmark, it was a pleasure and so a big empowerment when you met, because the Frente 3 de Fevereiro came to Berlin to present performance football, soccer, so in English, and and this was for me the moment when something happened and opened our mind in Berlin, because we are very active here in different scenes, but with football, in this moment we had in German the FIFA World Cup, né? So and it was like German invite people in Germany, we say die Welt zu Gast bei Freunden, the world as a guest with friends. But at the same time, as you know, the history of German is very complicated. And in this complication was also the spokesman or the former spokesman from the also former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who says is before 1 week before the FIFA World Cup started. And then it was a scandal in German to talk like this, because he says, I'm gonna call his what he said. Just a moment, I have just to find here. Prepare here. Well, she says there are small and, or he says, sorry, he said there are small and medium-sized cities in Brandenburg and elsewhere where I would not advise anyone who has a different skin color to go. He might not leave her alive. It means another skin color, it means not white people. Because we had at this time a lot of attacks from the neo-Nazis in different towns. Brandenburg is a region nearby Berlin. And then it was like a shock for everybody in the society, but not for us. And then during this meet with the Frente Fevereiro, connect with our reality in Brazil, to put on the table the police, this military police violence, as Jennifer at the beginning, yes, explained very well in her national presentation, how Frente 3 de Fevereiro was able to deal with racism of an other level of visibility with a poetic, I would say, as with art, but going deeper into the society. And in Berlin, we had then, I think, about 1 week or 10 days workshop with different collectives where we start to speak about our experience, because it was a lot of people, the most often colleagues working with refugees, with people without papers, under paper, what you call it in English, I don't know.
Undocumented.
Undocumented.
Yeah.
Undocumented. Yeah, and then it was very, very interesting to ask what's happened with you in this town. And then we had a kind of map of Berlin, and everybody start to point and to mark the area where you would never go during the night, where you're gonna go maybe during the day, and you never go alone there. And then this area was like in our mind, everyone has in the mind, well, a kind of invisible map who you never try to go to this area. And then with Frente 3 de Fevereiro, we use the skills and the tools these people brought from Brazil to Berlin to realize and to discuss a lot how we can do an intervention in the daily life in Berlin, just to make it visible where you can find the no-go area in Berlin city. At the end came a very wonderful, I would say, slogan like no go area, but no like knowing go area. And then Fernando, so I think Fernando did the wonderful banner, a huge banner with this word no-go area. Some days before the open of the FIFA World Cup, we enjoyed a demonstration, a march in Berlin with this huge banner. It was the premiere of it against racism, against violence. And then in the day of the opening of the FIFA World Cup, was the decision to bring this huge banner to the ceremony of the opening. And then was the question how to go there with this huge banner without being stopped, because when it was like control all over, you could not bring your backpack. And then you said, well, we are Brazilian. It was a decision that we are Brazilian. We gonna like put samba costumes, play samba, and with a lot of green and yellow t-shirt and things like that. And then it was like going through this control, and people ask, what is this? And then the colleagues, you can see it in the documentation, Zumbi Somos Nós. And then how it came through, and this guy there who was controlling, it was like the movement was so big, and they could not stop. And then suddenly the group get there. And then during the open, the first image, broadcast, was this huge banner, what was open for the colleague. And then this moment was a cut because they was surprised. So this was a lot of surprise moment for the whole audience, for the organizer. And this moment, I realized how a camouflage, so like using a cliche, Brazilian cliche, samba, as a tool for art movement, as a protest. And these mark our movement in Berlin, because after this moment when we came together, a lot of colleagues start to think, how can use different kind of strategies and tools to provide and also to be able to go out and fight violence without a kind of, would say, without guns, of course, without guns, but with art. In another moment, which was very important for us in Berlin, was to go to the no-go areas and in no-go areas where we know that the some neo-Nazis live. And then it was used. It was a really as sign. We did some signs, and to put in front of the house of these guys with no-go area, no-go area, in front of the house of these people we know very well who live there. And this was for me a moment when I realized how important art can be used against such kind of violence. And also for the whole bunch of colleagues who worked together with Frente of 3 Fevereiro at this time. We met sometimes when the Frente went back to Brazil and discussed how can we keep this kind of experience going on. And I can tell you that my work here at the Ballhaus Nauenstrasse is a theater with a strategy to open our space give visibility, to promote visibility, working intersectional for people who never had experience as a protagonist. We call it a post-migrant theater. It's a slogan because post-migrant, it means I belong, so the system, but we are putting history on the stage from no white, so history, no white history. And this experience with the Frente of 3 de Fevereiro gave me a lot of energy, a lot of tools and skills to bring inside of the house the possibility to open the doors for the Black perspectives. Because before I came here was my colleague Shermin Langhoff, who started this space based on history from the second and third generation of Turkish, Kurdish, and Armenian German colleagues. And since I started, I invite a lot of Black people, and the Ballhaus Nauenstraße became the first Black theater in German. And last year we got award, so a federal prize for the 10 years work we are doing here. And this is for me very well connected with this experience I had with Frente 3 de Fevereiro, because the violence is very, the violence of the racism is in whole, I would say, level of the society in Germany. At the same time, a Black guy like me living here, so I'm in Berliner, we say I am in Berliner because I lived more time in Germany than I lived in Brazil. And I could have this opportunity to, to be the artistic director of this house, and also open this space and hold this space for a new generation of colleagues who never had the experience with the theater before, or some are very professional, very well known. But it's very in our daily life, to do our work, we have to fight a lot. In this moment, we are doing the same thing, fight against founding cards. And it means that if it's since last week, we got this information that some institution, most of them work with refugees, with minority, or minority in our situation is the minority Black people in this situation, and also with art education program. They will be gone in the 1st of January if you don't change the situation. It's because the new government is a very conservative, and then we have a paradox in this situation because the Secretary of Culture in Berlin, I'm gonna show you a picture. I don't know if you can see, I don't know. It's very small. Is a Black guy used, like in Brazil, Sérgio Camargo during Bolsonaro government, to do a job that's against us. And that's very, very scary. And to give you a perspective of our visibility, I'm gonna bring you to another room here and give you a view of our people, our colleagues. And then you can, I think you can see it a bit. And another one. It means we are putting the colleagues who are not the white colleagues on the stage and have the opportunity to tell history which was never told in this society. And with the connection with the Frente 3 de Fevereiro, we had also some issues in Berlin, like Orijalo, who was killed in the police, I don't know what you call it, delegacia in English, I don't know.
Police station.
A police station, police station. And until now, it's not, it's not clarified what's happened there. But we know that the police killed Orijalo. It's like in Brazil when you start Frente de Fevereiro, the same situation. And it means for us that we have to be very aware about the dangers outside, but we have to be also powerful to go outside and to do what we want to do. And today, again, we went to a huge demonstration or manifestation against the funding cuts. And we are in I put a lot of links in the chat group. People can go there and see what's going on in the Instagram, and then also visit our website. Because if the cuts will be really like we got last week, the whole structure of culture in Berlin will be changed. And it's like Jennifer says in the beginning, like what's happened with Trump. We can speak about Urban, we can speak about Meloni, you can speak about a lot of right-wing, politicians who can change a lot of perspective for a short time, but the damage can be for a long time for all of us. And for this meet with the Frente 3 de Fevereiro, I'm very, very happy. So we met again. Daniel came to Ballhaus to participate in different kind of project here, and also to have Neso, the book of your mother, to Neso, because she was the person who started and then to provoke you all to start Frente 3 de Fevereiro during Neso after the killing of the dentist in São Paulo, and also connect with our ancestralidade, ancestor. It's very important what I have learned with you all, that we are not here alone. We have a past. It's like Ubuntu. Now we have a past. I need you to exist. You need me to exist. And that is for me a very important situation that I can share with you, my experience with the Frente 3 de Fevereiro, and knowing no-go areas in Berlin, and also had this opportunity to exchange of also, I would say, at a very high level of discussion, of strategy, a lot of fight, a lot of contradiction, a lot of common sense, but at the end, the same goals. That's why I thank you so much for this moment we had in the past, and also for this moment now.
Thank you very much, Wagner. Thank you all, Jennifer, Ismail, and Wagner, for the wonderful presentations. We're going to have like a more informal discussion now. There's a Q&A if people want to ask questions. There's already one question. I'm going to read it so we can put it in our discussion.
Felipe, let me just make some comments before the questions. Thank you so much, Jennifer, Ismail, Wagner. It's very beautiful, and I really want to give a hug, a personal hug for each one, because we are alive. We are alive and fighting against the same hegemonic forces that construct a very injustice and destruction society. So I think we have a lot of knowledge in all these talks, and I see 3 lines, maybe 4 lines to trying to develop. We need like 1 week together to develop and go deeper in that questions. But I will put just to put some analysis in my point of view of these 20 years. I have one line that we can analyze these 3 talks have to do in the way of collective regime. How can we start? And we started as Frente Fevereiro like a family together, like friends. And after, each one has a different way to develop the heritage, the knowledge of the Frente Fevereiro. Became a web in a work without this relation, personal relation, in a partnership like we did, me and Ismail, but also as imagination, also construction, a collective in a kind of imagination of the collective, not in certain way. It's like a fiction of a collective. In that way, Wagner, you said about my mother, it's very beautiful, the work that we are presenting here, and I will introduce it very shortly. The work, it's around in the background of Eugênio right now. It's a room where Maurinete presents the work of Frente 3 Fevereiro in a scale, in a 100% scale, and she presents the history of Frente 3 Fevereiro and their own history. And we reconstruct the voice of Maurinete and look all the texts that she wrote and all the interviews she did and construct lines of talk, and she present, and we reconstruct also the face by this technology of deep fake, and she now has this kind of presence, very poetic, in a poetic way, a presence to present in a room like a box that you open of memories, and you bring image, sounds, and photos around this idea of performing the archive of the Frente 3 Fevereiro. So this is line for me, it's huge and very important to deal with this all right wing that it's very reactive of the transformation in the beginning of 2000. It's a very reactive. It is the most powerful maybe moment, and the potence of this right wing is the cognitive way. It's the way that the people think about the world. So in that field, we need to enter like in imagination, create this kind of collective work, also not only by presence together and working together in an effective way, but also in imagination. I just put some more 2 or 3 lines. I think also one line to analyze and think about the connection of these 3 talks has to do is this idea of fractal research, the research that has different scales and try to construct a diagram of control, diagram that crossing all the society in different scales, in different fields, social fields. So this is why we all get together in different moments, but trying to analyze different situations. And Jennifer bring us the project of emergency exit, when the Frente 3 Fevereiro understood that we need to look at the geopolitical diagram to understand better our self-education about the politics and this struggle against the hegemonic and racist and exclusion way of dealing in our society. So geopolitical way has to do with South Africa, USA, Colombia, Haiti, and this was a very important for us. And that give us to the third line that we met Wagner Carvalho, that was the exclusion, geographic way of exclusion. How can we solve these invisible maps of exclusion? And this is what for us was a big learning and changing all the process of Frente de Fevereiro. Understand about this idea that police violence, nation, and exclusion has a connection between the geographic field. So, and just to conclusion, the first line, I think it could be analyze the idea of the strategy, how we find and develop new strategies to deal with this research, action, and creation in art field in those 20 years. So just to put some thoughts. And just to finalize, Rachel, I think we need to put all this conversation with image to bring in edit way, more the visual way that we are talking about. Thank you.
So we have two questions here. Should I read them and then we can answer? The first one, the first one is from Danny Moshayedi. It's evident that your work seeks to draw a kind of narrative across national boundaries. My question is in regards to how you face the differences in visual culture in the different countries you work in. How do you account for the unique visual cultures and histories in places like South Africa or Haiti, while seeking to create your new work, which naturally comes from a Brazilian context? And another one from Roger Cummings. Could you expound on how your practice and knowledges identify anti-Black analysis globally, but specifically in Brazil and South Africa colorism, and the connection to Black Americans, where the one-drop rule tied Black people in a specific space versus Black colored white? So I don't know if I understood the second question. Maybe Roger, if you could explain a little bit more. Anybody wants to answer the Danny question? Eugenio, Daniel?
I think for the first question, we have a lot of difference in the fields we work, South Africa, Germany, and USA. But it's a connective because the apparatus of control is still racializing the majority of the humanity. And this violence against this racial humanity, it's a very common in these fields because we work with a lot of images and we work a lot of concepts, but it's still connected with the political hegemonical way to do with the capitalism. I read recently, I read a lot of racial capitalism, but it's, remember, there is capitalism without racism. That is possible to be capitalism without racism. Capitalism is racist. It's racialized in the beginning, the racialized people, the racialized nations, the racialized almost, and it's like the white humanism. It's not humanism, it's only white humanism. The Black people, the indigenous people, the native people, the people of who colored by the white thought, it's a basic racism. Obvious, there is intersection with class, with territory, with gender. It's obvious, but it's still the same. Racism inside the mother of transformation of capitalism. That is the global way, not because the reality is the same. No, the reality is not the same. The history is changed in every country. Germany is different of Brazil, is different of South Africa, is different of USA, Haiti, Colombia, and many other places. But the operators of controls, like the unique person, you need to create the public enemy, and this public enemy, it's almost time, it's the black, is the poor, is the transgender people, it's all the others, is not a white person or white Eurocentric person, and that's the reason we work with a lot of across the boundaries, because the strategy of the violence is the same. That's the reason, I think, for the first question.
Yeah, and I would like to add that every time that we went to another country, another culture to develop a work, we always bring a proposition, but we always try to get in contact with local movements, local groups. Like, for example, in Germany, we were invited to go. There was the World Cup and all this, but we took the banner, but we didn't know what was going to be written in it. So we did this workshop that Wagner was mentioning with collectives of immigrants in Germany, and then together with them we got to the no-go area idea. And also in Haiti, we did a small banner. We also get in touch with local painters so they could do the banner for us. Like, so it's always in a dialogue with local people. It's not like we're bringing from Brazil this idea for you to do. So I think that is also an important clarification.
I want to propose a question for our friends in different places, German, South Africa, United States. We saw this increasing of the right wing and the violence and the people that put in a very clear way the idea of white supremacists. And I want to ask, how do you think about this, and how do you feel in that moment, the reaction or the creation, the alternative of art, and the language and the strategies to deal with this right-wing ascension and the force that is completely in our lives, like getting out the theater, get out the money of the culture, like this. So university also has a very strong attack of right wing in United States, and also in South Africa. We saw a lot of conflicts, social conflicts, like we look at in 2008, but related with different disparadores, different points of explosions. How can you put some reflection on this, my friends? Can we start with Jennifer?
Sure, I'm happy to start. I mean, I think that, this is really obviously horrifically apparent in the United States. I think I see it, and it's a complex phenomenon, but I think that among other things, I see it as part of the very, the process of the decline of the US as an empire, and it's the fact also that we have here, a kind of neoliberal order that is increasingly delivering less to the masses of people and hoarding the majority of wealth more and more for a tiny, tiny elite. And you really see that in the kind of increasing immiseration you see across the US and the really downward fortunes of the working class over the course of decades. And I'm thinking, Adolf Reed Jr. has been really good on analyzing this, as really kind of saying that as neoliberalism has less and less to offer the masses, we see ruling classes having perhaps less interest in sort of the institutions of liberalism and democracy and moving towards much stronger sort of generalized authoritarianism, which the US has historically at different moments generally, but not exclusively, reserved for its forms of imperialist governance. Though it has always, used those forms of authoritarian social control among immigrant populations, racialized workers, and of course, its sort of internal colonial labor pools within the territories of the United States. But I see also, this kind of increasingly explicit turn towards really overtly racist discourses, and this sort of and white supremacist discourse is also sort of offering, on one hand, a kind of false sense of belonging to people who are not being offered much in terms of, just goods to survive or to, have a quality life. And of course, it plays the really important function also of scapegoating onto the most vulnerable portions of the working class, deflecting attention from the elites who are producing the situation. The kind of racist scapegoating has a really important function also in, distracting and dividing the working class here. So I think and then I think what you said about the way that culture in the universities are really one of the battlegrounds in which this is taking shape. And you really can see that at the universities right now, at the incredible crackdown on the pro-Palestine movement, student movement, basically the outlawing of all kinds of political speech at the universities, as well as really explicit efforts by sort of the investor class to try to take over the universities and take over their governance as well. So it seems to me like, these are, it seems to me that culture like that, we also have to, really see this turn towards fascism within the United States, kind of in the way that we think, like we learned also to think about it from people like Aimé Césaire and, Black Marxists who also really analyzed it as, colonialism coming home. And I think that in understanding what's going on domestically here, it really is important that we think about the kind of ways that these forms of racism and authoritarianism have long been part of the way the US has operated, among particular sectors of the global proletariat. And a lot of that's becoming more generalized now.
Thank you, Jennifer. Great to hear you. Ismail, do you want to add some reflection about this issue?
Hi, sorry about that. Am I unmuted? Yes. Okay, perfect. Yes, I don't have much to add, Daniel. Just to say that, just thinking about my presentation earlier and the questions around the kinds of xenophobic violence we were experiencing in the context of South Africa, in this present moment, it's really sort of sort of horrifying to witness and to see how so back then this violence spilled out and on society, and to see now in this moment how it is kind of state sanctioned to the point where we had political parties in the recent elections that were using violence against non-South African or people of non-South African identity as part of their main sort of election focus. In fact, one of the winning parties in KwaZulu-Natal, the state I'm in, used this as a rallying call in the election and won. And these days, we actually have the police leading the way, you know, in terms of carrying out mass arrests in the streets, and followed by a mob of people. And this has all been normalized, and it's kind of shocking and to see and witness this unimaginable reality unfold. Yeah, it's just very scary, dark times that we're experiencing and living in right now. Yeah. Sorry, I think you're muted.
And do you think, Ismail, thank you. But do you think the art field and cultural field can help us in that fight?
Absolutely. However, I mean, I'm generally becoming very despondent. You know, I guess, you know, been working in isolation and feeling quite alone. And I guess this is the sort of importance of the work you're doing and the kind of ethos of your work, which is that we are not alone and we are strong together. And that you know, the sort of the point of this is the solidarity we share, right? And coming together in these moments. So as long as we have the solidarity, I feel there's hope, and more than hope, you know, we have the tools, you know, to bring the fight. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Ismail.
Thank you.
Wagner, you
Yeah.
are struggling right now,
Yeah.
those days.
Yeah. But I think that what Jennifer says, and also Ismail, for us living here in Germany, it's very complicated right now, because we have a right-wing party rising, really alternative for German, and then the Democratic Party, the most conservative, start to do like the same kind of politics. So we use the same strategy to be voted. And then sometimes we don't know who is more right-wing than the other. And then we have another situation, Jennifer says, different in a moment. For example, I went to a meeting with the Secretary of Culture in Berlin with different colleagues from different culture institution, to talk about a clause against anti-Semitism. Because they try to introduce this kind of, you are not able to work with people who is supporting BDS, who is supporting Palestine, and so really difficult. And then because in German you have the constitution and there's a freedom of speech, but in the daily life it's totally different, because the state sanctions is very high. A lot of colleagues lose job, lose funding, lose visa, because they use the freedom of speech and spoke what they thought about this situation between Palestine and Israel. And I went to this meeting and says that I was born in Brazil, and my first vote was 1989 after the military dictatorship. And I had this same feeling that I had in Brazil in my teenager time, and when start to do the political theater, because in this time it was very difficult to speak something. We should use a metaphor, so to communicate some issues on the stage. And it's the same situation in German right now. Right now, it's really, really difficult. And then solidarity is the most important thing we can have in this moment, because without solidarity, we cannot change the system. We cannot change the situation, because we alone, we cannot do anything like changing really in the practice, because the most of the institution in German supported by the government with paid tax money. And when they cut it, you don't have any possibility to work, to do something with your art. And then the question for me, how to be smart, how to be able to use the art as a tool to transform the society. And that's what we are doing in our daily life here with the colleagues, with different groups, find out the ways that we can use to be on stage or on the street, because the society is also reacting against the right wings. But in the last election, in 3 different regions in Germany, they got more, they voted about 31 and 30% and 29%. It means that if it keep like this,
Wagner,
yeah,
can I stop you just quickly? Jennifer has
Yeah.
to leave right now, so just to thank Jennifer for everything.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And-
I come to the end. I come to the end. That is like the most important thing is being together in this moment. Being together. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Wagner. Well, I think we could be like for hours talking and discussing these issues, but unfortunately we have run out of time. So thank you again for everybody who participated, who joined us today. Thank you, Jennifer, Wagner, and Ismail. Thank you, Eugenio, Danielle. Thank you, Rachel and Maya, for the invitation. Do you want to say any final words, Danielle?
I just want to thank you. Thank you, Rachel, and the Arts Institution here for our opportunity to be together and discuss in a very short way, in a very quick way, but it's very nice to hear. And the solidarity that Wagner put on the table, I think it's Mayu also put on the table. I think it's our connection, and we are together, even in different places, but we are together at the same fight for sure.
And
Also I invite everyone to come here at the UCSC Arts Institute to see the exhibition, Sinterstone.
Yeah, I thank you all very much for this. I think that this moment that we're in, both globally, but also in the United States, thinking internationally, thinking across solidarities between our communities, between our struggles, is incredibly important and something that we're really committed to with Visualizing Abolition. And thank you so much for your for doing this, Frente, Felipe, Daniel and Eugenio, and for organizing this as part of Seeing Through Stone, our major exhibition that's up right now in Santa Cruz and also San Jose, and with our collaborator Barrios Unidos as well. So thank you all and have a wonderful day, evening, night, whatever.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.